16 years a junior. That's not just a tagline to try to grab your attention. Um, for my case, the way I view it, it very much is a reality, and so I kind of want to walk through that because I know for many of you that is part of the concern. Like, how long am I going to be a junior developer, and how is that going to affect my career? And again, everybody's journey is going to be different, so hopefully yours is better than mine in the way that it progressed. But I just want to jump in and kind of talk to you about how my journey began and how it progressed through those junior years, all 16 of them, and just kind of share my life story in that process, and hopefully that'll be an encouragement to you as we go. So this first kind of section of my journey I've entitled Planting a Seed. So this kind of starts the answer to Mel's question. And I've mentioned this before, but I'll try to be brief with it. So this will tell you how old I am, but my senior year of high school, I graduated in 1999. We had a computer course, and the computer course was originally designed to go through the Microsoft suite. So back in that time, it was Word and Excel, Access databases. It was PowerPoint, I think. Those were the main four, if I remember correctly, at the time. And I had grown up with computers. I was born in 81. Computers were really just starting to come, the home PC was really just starting to come into reality. And so we went through the material that was slated for a year. We went through the first semester. And the guy that was teaching the class actually was doing some web development back in 1999. It was kind of rudimentary web development. And he's like, well, you know what? I will teach you guys basic HTML, basic web development. So my first editor was Notepad in Windows, not Notepad++, Notepad. And no debugging, nothing that would tell you that you made an error anywhere. Just it wouldn't work the way that you would want it to work. And so we learned basic HTML my senior year of high school. The whole computer class did, and I really enjoyed it. I really took to it. After we kind of learned the basics, he showed us Front Page. If anybody happens to remember Front Page. We used that and built some websites, and then he mocked our websites as our final grade, which was fun. And while I enjoyed it, I thought it was fun. I felt like my career was going to be in a different avenue. I thought I actually went to school for a Bible degree. I actually have a master's from a seminary that is no longer exists. But so I do have a master's degree, if you accept it, and it's in pastoral theology. Has nothing to do with writing code. But that was, to me, I call that planting the seed, because that never really left me, even though my assumed path, my assumed journey, was going in really a completely different direction. Even while I was at college, I still messed around with HTML, and it's kind of funny. I had a roommate in college my freshman year who was a computer science major, and he worked on the side building websites as well. I didn't really learn anything from him, but it's just, looking back, it's just kind of interesting, some of the interactions that I had along the way. My second year at college, I had another roommate who was a computer science degree. So I don't know if I just was really oblivious to the signs of what I was supposed to be doing or what. But it was interesting that both of those 2 years I had other people who were dealing with computers. So, but that seed was planted my senior year of high school, and it never really left. It just kind of sat there dormant for a while. I would play around with stuff here and there. But I graduated with my master's in 2006. And when I graduated, I didn't really feel like pursuing a full-time career as a pastor was what I was supposed to do, for varying reasons. And so I just kind of floundered for a bit, to be perfectly honest with you. Everything kind of seemed to be like a pretty floundering career. But as I was going, you know, I kind of this period of time I call scratching the itch. I kept playing around with stuff. Like I'd never really lost that interest in coding. And even though it was just HTML at the beginning, I started researching things and seeing how websites were built and realizing there's more to this world than just HTML. There's CSS, there's JavaScript, there's backend coding languages like PHP and MySQL. And so probably about 2005, I started kind of learning how to really develop, how to really write real code to build, you know, real websites and real web applications. And so that was kind of the beginning of the real journey as a junior developer. So I say I've been writing code since 1999. So I've been writing code for 25 years, but probably about 2005 is around the time that I really began to take seriously the possibility of actually being able to make money writing code. So so that's why, you know, that became more of an itch that I felt like I needed to scratch. I needed to keep looking at this thing and learning this stuff, because I really felt like there was an opportunity there. No clue really before that, not really much of a desire to turn it into a job, but I was at least interested in it from 1999 to 2005. So that's kind of when the real journey began for me. In 2005, that's when I discovered back-end programming languages, and that's when I discovered content management systems. The first CMS that I ever worked with was Joomla. This is Joomla. Wow, I didn't even know that they still existed. Not my favorite CMS, but I did learn how to build templates and things like this. And in fact, as I was learning Joomla, I had the opportunity to kind of do some stuff with my brother. I don't remember if I even got paid for it. He'll probably tell me later that I did get paid for it, and I just don't remember. But I certainly didn't get paid very much if I did get paid. But he had a website that was built in Joomla, I think from the company, the people who had built it before for the company he was working for. And I was, you know, learning PHP and MySQL and obviously front end stuff, and so he told me, hey, you know, I've got some issues. He knew that I was playing around with that stuff. Hey, do you think you could fix some of these things or help me out with this? And so I actually helped him out with several websites, his and some client websites along the way, and and that was all Joomla templates. I didn't really do a whole lot of programming. It was mostly just building templates for Joomla. But around 2008 is when I started, you know, working with that. So I did a lot of learning from 2005 to 2008, just trying to understand how do I write real code? How do I build things that actually work? I mean, it's not just this static website, right? How do I take this coding thing to the next level? What do I need to learn to make myself a real developer, to make myself somebody that somebody can feel comfortable hiring, whether it's as a freelancer or comfortable hiring in a specific role. This was kind of the path that first presented itself because it was free to learn. And so that's the journey that I went down. So to answer some of Mel's question earlier, it was mostly just research. It was trying to figure out, you know, Stack Overflow, I think was around then. So I would learn some things through Stack Overflow, reading a lot of documentation. That's probably one of the reasons why I tell people they need to learn to read documentation, is because that's how I learned. I feel like I understand things better having read the documentation. And so Joomla was kind of my gateway into building applications. And so I started doing some things on the side to help my brother out with his company, or at least the company that he was working for at the time. And it's kind of funny. I think I've told you guys before, you do not want me to design any website. Because I use templates, I use component libraries, things like that, so that I don't have to worry about trying to come up with something that looks good, because I don't do well at coming up with things that look good. And just to give you an idea of that, I pulled this little example from my email archives um, that I had sent to my brother as a as kind of a demo layout of what we could do with one of the projects that he was working on. So now, granted, this was early on in my career as a junior developer, but I have a feeling most of you guys could probably build something a whole lot better than this pretty quickly. This is a pretty sad design, but this is actually HTML. So I did all of this in rudimentary HTML. Back in 2009 for my brother. Notice the copyright, it's still hard-coded right there. So that was largely working with Joomla. I'm pretty sure that website was on Joomla. That was going to be a Joomla template, I think. And then in 2010, I found WordPress. Many, if not most of you, probably are familiar with WordPress. It's a CMS that I very much enjoyed. I think they just did things in a better way. I know their two main competitors are probably Joomla and Drupal. I don't like either of those. I've worked in all three of them. To me, WordPress is the easiest to work with, not just as a user, but as a developer as well. So I've developed themes, I've developed plugins for WordPress, and so I was just learning. I was learning all these things, and there was a little bit of frustration growing too, because I knew that I had some skill sets that were helpful. I was able to do some things for my brother. Whether he paid me anything or not, I don't remember. If he paid me anything, it wasn't very significant. So I'm sure I spent much more time working on stuff than it was worth whatever he paid me. That's nothing against him. That's just the reality of me not knowing the value of what I was doing. And so, but I did begin to get a little frustrated because as I was going through my email history, I started realizing that I had really started looking for developer roles way back in 2008. And and a lot of it actually revolved originally around like Craigslist. So I would look for gigs in Craigslist, if anybody remembers what Craigslist was. So I would do these I would put my resume out for gigs on Craigslist, and I never got any. And that was frustrating because I was like, man, if I can't even get a gig on Craigslist, I mean, how is a company going to hire me? Am I really as good as I think I am? Right? And I kind of began to question myself. I kind of, began to wonder if there was something else that I was missing. Like, do I need to go get a technical degree? Do I need to go get a computer science degree? Do I need to go get some sort of training, like locally, Centrix is one of the big names locally. I don't think there were very many boot camps like we have now. Back then in 2008, if any, it was more like specific training facilities and things like that. But I seriously started to question, A, if I was even cut out to do this as a job, and then B, if I was going to need some sort of training in order to be able to get companies to actually look at me. But I didn't really have the money to do that, and I didn't want to go into debt for it, so I just kind of kept hacking away. I kept working on things myself and trying to learn and grow and get better and learn these different content management systems, because those seemed to be kind of the big thing at the time. Was you needed to be a WordPress developer or a Joomla developer or a Drupal developer if you wanted to get most of the roles that I was looking at. But it was interesting going back and looking at my my email history, how many jobs I applied for even back in 2008, and I hadn't remembered that, to be honest with you. It's one of the things that kind of I had blocked out of my memory, that I kind of forget some of the struggle, and it's good to go back and look at those things. And I would encourage you, if you're looking to get into a job, if you are trying to get into your first job, once you get that, go back and look at your email history, because most likely unless you're just deleting everything like you probably should. um, you've probably got a lot of history in there of applications you filled out and interviews that you went on and things like that. And so it was kind of, actually going back through the history was a little discouraging again, just kind of having that brought back up to my memory as far as how long I really did actually look for doing any of this for pay. I was doing some, small freelance work on the side, but none of that was a full-time job like I wanted. I wanted to get into that, and so I just kept kind of scratching that itch, and really, I just wanted somebody to give me a chance. I wanted somebody to see what I had done and value what I had done and see my desire and my knowledge and my willingness to learn. I wanted somebody to see that and just give me a shot, because I felt like if I could just get a shot, then I could prove that I could do the job, because I'd been doing things but I just wasn't getting paid for it. I didn't have this portfolio. I didn't even know about Git, so I didn't have like a GitHub account. I think Git was around then. I'd have to look it up and see. But like I didn't have, I just kind of I'd send links out to websites that I had worked on. In fact, I saw one of the emails that I had sent out had like 4 different websites. None of them I think work anymore. But I would just send links out to websites that I had worked on and tell them what I had done before I really even had my own website or my own portfolio or a GitHub account. So I just wanted somebody to give me a chance. And in talking with a lot of you guys, I feel like that's where many of you are. You've put in a lot of effort. You've put in a lot of learning. You've gone through a lot of struggle, and you just need somebody to give you a chance. So I know what that feels like. I've been there. And in many ways I've suppressed that feeling over time, but I want you to know that you're not alone. Most junior devs right now are feeling that way. People in the past have felt that way. I've felt that way. Really, again, I was starting to do that back in 2008, 2009, and I didn't have my first full-time role until 2011. So 2 or 3 years I spent trying to get a job as a developer, as a self-taught developer. And I don't know if that was part of the problem. Maybe if I had a degree in computer science, I would have got more looks. I don't know. But I really felt like I had the knowledge, or I could learn anything that I needed to learn to do the job. I just needed somebody to give me a chance. And that chance really didn't come for almost 3 years from the time that I first started looking. That doesn't probably sound very encouraging to some of you guys, but I hope that it maybe gives you a little bit of perspective. That was during a time where we didn't have this massive onslaught of junior developers. That was during a time where theoretically it should have been easier for me to get a job, but for whatever reason, I couldn't get people to either look at my resume or to consider me, and I don't know why. I never got any feedback from anybody as to why they were rejecting me, but for 2 to 3 years, somewhere in there, 2+ years for sure, I was just grinding. I was just grinding, trying to find somebody that would give me a chance, trying to find ways that I could prove myself. And many of you know that first real kind of proving ground came when I was at that job that my wife got me as a customer service representative. And I ended up building several small applications to help different groups within the call center. And that really solidified for me 2 things. It solidified that I really wanted to do that as my career. Like that was the thing. Like I really enjoyed that. I wanted to do that. And the second thing is that I could do it, right? So I wanted to do it and I could do it. I could actually build stuff that people needed and that people wanted and that people were thankful for and that people enjoyed using. And if I were to go back and show you, I don't think I have that code anywhere. If I were to go back and show it to you, all of you would probably laugh at how simple it is, and how, what you build now on a daily basis is probably much more powerful, much cooler, designed much better than anything that I did there. But it proved to me that that's what I wanted to do, and it kind of gave me the desire to double down. It was at that point, after I had built those things, that I finally had the opportunity, right? And this is what I call being a real dev. So up to this point, I hadn't really, I'd done some things for people, I'd done some things internally, but from an outside perspective, I wasn't a real dev yet. And I think in many ways, you guys probably can resonate with that feeling. You've probably built a lot of different things. If you've done a lot of tutorials, you've probably built lots of different programs, but you probably don't feel like you're a real dev yet. Or maybe you just don't feel like other people see you as a real dev yet. And for me, that's kind of where I was. I knew that I could do it. I knew that I had the skills and the ability to learn, but I didn't feel like anybody else really took me seriously. How did I become a real dev? I got a full-time gig. And it was a weird series of events. I had been doing some side work with my brother, as I mentioned before, and he had the opportunity to bid on developing some software for an organization that he interacted with on a regular basis. And of course, the first question that he asked me was, do you really think you can build this? He's like, here's everything that we need to build. Are you sure that you can do this? Because he's putting his neck out there. He's like, I'm going to tell them that we can build this thing and it's going to cost this amount of money. And I need to know that you can actually do this. So even though I'd done stuff for him in the past, he was not necessarily completely convinced that I could do what we needed to do. So I started searching around to see, well, what else can I learn that's going to be real coding? Again, right? I had a real developer job. Theoretically, I was getting paid to be a real developer. So I need to go out there and find what real developers are using, and I need something that's going to help me do it very quickly. And so I came across the concept of frameworks. And the first framework that I used was a framework called CodeIgniter. And they're actually on version 4. The version that we used was version 2. So I don't know if any of you have ever played around with CodeIgniter, but I use CodeIgniter 2 to build that application for the next couple years. And I think the best part about going through that process and building that application wasn't so much that I built an application, because I knew that I could do that, right? It was the fact that I built something that met a need. And it met a need for a large organization. And we actually built, with CodeIgniter, we were able to build kind of a modular system where we would create different modules that could be turned off and on for different clients, because this organization had multiple subsets, and there were a couple different subsets that were using this application. So we had it deployed in a couple different places for each of them, and they had different needs. And so we built out the different pieces with CodeIgniter as our main framework there. And so that's when I really began to feel like I was a real dev. I was taking real dev tools, writing real code every day, most of the time. Sometimes I was not working as much as I should have. And then I'd spend the wee hours of the morning trying to make up for it. But I was doing a real job. Somebody gave me the opportunity to prove that I could do what I thought I could do. And sometimes that's all you need. You just need somebody to believe in you. You need somebody to to give you that first opportunity. And that first opportunity may not necessarily be the best opportunity. I made a lot less as a junior developer working for my brother than you guys do, and part of that's because of the time. You know, we've had an increase in wages over the years, but even then, I didn't make a lot. It met our needs, which was what we needed, which is part of my flow diagram, if you know from another video. But I was doing what I felt like I could do, and I knew that if I could pull this off, that would open the door to other things. And so we built this for almost 3 years. We had the prototyping time, and then we started building with CodeIgniter, built out 2 main applications for this client. And then all of a sudden, being a real dev went away. And I ended up taking a step back in my career. And this is kind of the part that my wife was reminding me of last night, that I had pretty much blocked out completely from my memory. This was probably the hardest point in my journey. So working for my brother, I was not an employee. I was technically a contractor, but he was paying me basically a full-time salary. Around September or so, I think, was the end of the budget for the organization that we were doing this work for. And they didn't have any more work for us to do. They didn't have anything else that they wanted to add, or that they were willing to pay to add to the application. And my brother was not a software company. He did not own a software company. Neither of us really knew how to manage a software company. We didn't know how to interact with clients. We're just trying to make the money that we needed to live, and, you know, put out a good product at the same time. When that hit, we didn't have anything else in the pipeline. We didn't have any other jobs. He didn't have any other things that I could work on for him. And he basically said, you need to go get a real job, which was really tough, because that was my real job. That's what I wanted to do. And so obviously I put out more resumes, applications, things like that. Here I actually had experience now. I had almost 3 years of experience actually building real world products. I could give them information about what I had done. I could get interviews and do that, but I wasn't even getting interviews. I had 3 years of experience as a developer full time, and I wasn't getting any interviews from anybody. And that was really scary. That was the deepest point in my process. And when I had no more work in October of 2013, this is also the longest time that I went between jobs as a developer. I got to the point where after about a month, I had to do something. So I just started applying for any job, anything that sounded technical. I applied for pretty much, and that was maybe not the best jobs in the world, but I even applied for jobs at Papa John's as a delivery driver. Like, I was looking for anything at the time, and this was back in 2013, and I was able to get a job in December, so I got kind of let go in October, and I got a job in December taking phone calls for technical support for TurboTax. We were just ramping up for the new year, and so we went through training in December and started working in January, taking phone calls and helping people out with their computer problems on TurboTax, which is not what I wanted to do, was not what I was intending to do, but it was at least a technical job, and it was paying the bills at the time. And then I had my ray of hope. Out of the blue, I had put out resumes on like monster.com and careerbuilder.com and things like that. And one Saturday morning, I got a call, mid to late January. I got a call from a recruiter. And I'd never talked to any recruiters before. I didn't even know there was such a thing in the dev world as recruiters. I didn't know they could help you get a job. And so I got a call from a recruiter, and on a Saturday morning, and he said, I was looking at your, I think it was Career Builder. I was looking at your Career Builder stuff, and I just wanted to say if you would be interested in this WordPress job. I was like, absolutely. I don't even know what it pays, but that's what I want to be doing. And so, so I said, absolutely, what do I need to do? And he gave me an assignment on that following Monday. And he basically, it was to build a page based off of a picture, based off of a design. And we didn't have Figma or things like that back then that would help you like know all the different ins and outs for the developer. You know, we just had to, you had to look at it and eyeball it and figure out, hey, is this working the way that it should? Throw it into Photoshop. I had a version of Photoshop at the time, trying to figure out sizing and things. And so I was taking phone calls for TurboTax, and in my between phone calls, I was working on this this template for WordPress to match this design. And so I got it done. I worked all night, most of the night actually, on it, and sent it to him the next day, and had the opportunity to interview. And I was so excited. Like, this was the only interview I'd gotten ever, I think. I don't think I had any real interviews to be a developer from the time I really started looking in 2008 to 2013. And so when I took that interview, I was like, this is it. This is where I want to work, because I never had any other interviews that I can think of, that I can remember. And so I went in, I met with them, and they ended up offering me the job that Friday. I think I interviewed on Thursday, and they offered me the job Friday. And they offered me less than what I was making with my brother. But I knew this is what I wanted to do. And my wife was very supportive during that time. And I was still able to do a few things on the side for my brother to kind of make up some of the difference. But I took a job, my second developer job, for less money than I made at my first developer job, just so that I could get back in, so that I could be a part and pursue the dream that I wanted to pursue, to be a real developer again. And so I was at that company for about 3 years. And it's there, you know, I was there from January, or I think it was actually February of 2013, October of 2016. But at the end of the day, I finally had a chance. But I had to make some sacrifices to get that chance along the way. And that's something that you may have to consider for yourself. I know many of you are single, and so taking that type of chance might be a little bit easier for you. In 2013, I was married, and I already had 3 of my 4 children. So taking that risk was very much a risk, to make less money than I had made before, to be able to hopefully pursue a career as a developer. It was a huge risk, and it did pay off. And I think for most people it can pay off, but it's something that you might have to consider in your journey. You might have to actually ask the question, am I willing to take this risk? Am I willing to maybe take less money? Am I willing to maybe work 2 jobs, my coding job and another job, to be able to make ends meet so that I can pursue this career that I really want to pursue? That may be choices that you have to make. And the way you're going to answer that is, how much do you really want to do this? You know, it's easy for me to sit here 10 years later and be like, well, yeah, that was the right choice, because now I make a lot more money, and I'm, you know, as we talked about, I'm a director in a company. I've definitely moved up in the ranks from junior to mid to senior to lead to director now. Like I've made a good career out of this, and that doesn't mean that needs to be the career path that you have to take, But I can look back on it and say, yeah, that was the right decision that I should have made. But that was a hard decision to make back in 2013, to take less money than I was making with my brother. I think it was more than I was making with TurboTax, which probably made it a little bit easier. But yeah, that was tough. That was a hard decision, but I knew that's where I wanted to be, and I knew that's the career that I wanted, and so I ended up taking that path. So, but in my mind, and in many other people's minds, I was still very much a junior developer. And again, this is why, that I titled this, 16 years a junior, because it's not just how I felt about myself, it's also how other people viewed me. And I know for a lot of you guys, you're going through the same struggle right now. Like you probably know, hey, I can do the job. I know I can build applications. I know I can build websites. I know I can, build mobile apps. I can build games. I have the skills. I've been doing this maybe even for years now on the side on my own, but nobody else has necessarily validated that you're there yet. And even at that company, again, I was brought in as a WordPress developer. And if you don't know much about the WordPress community or the development, how WordPress is viewed in the development community, it's not really viewed very highly. Most developers that I've interacted with will look at you. If you tell them you're a WordPress dev, they don't really consider you like a real dev. They don't consider you, because a lot of times the perception is that you're just working with the content management system. You're not actually writing code. I was actually writing code. I wrote themes. I wrote plugins. I would integrate with other systems. So like I was actually doing it, but the way that people perceived me, the way that people perceived my job, I wasn't even in. We had other developers. I wasn't even in the developer group. I was actually part of the design group, which again, if you saw that design I posted earlier, that didn't make a whole lot of sense because I'm not a designer, but I reported to the creative director because my role as a WordPress developer was more in line with their design clients than it was with their development clients. And so I was in this weird place. I was my own entity basically in this company, and they had, when I first started, they had 4 other devs, and then they grew. They had probably 20 devs or so at kind of the height of when I was there. But I was not part of that group. I was on the creative team. So the way other people viewed me was still very much as a junior developer. In fact, I would be introduced to people as the WordPress guy. And there was just kind of this feeling like I was less, right? Because I was a WordPress developer. And so even though I had experience building real applications, even though I'd been developing professionally for several years, I was just a WordPress guy. And so even though I knew I could do the job, and in my mind, I wasn't really a junior developer, for a lot of other people, I was still a junior developer. And that really didn't change until 2015. In 2015, I basically reached a point where I needed to make more money. And so I asked for a raise, and they said, well, the only way to give you a raise is we have to make you a real developer. They didn't say it in those terms, but that was basically what they meant. We're going to have to move you from the creative department over to the real developer department. And so, which I was perfectly happy with. I wanted to be a real developer. And so I was able to make not a lot more money, but enough money to cover my needs at the time. Actually, I think I ended up then matching what my brother was paying me before. So 3 years later, I finally got back up to the amount of money that he was paying me to do this full time. And so I went to, I became at that point in their minds probably a mid-level developer, or just a developer, right? I became a real developer in 2015. And I think the thing that struck me the most, not just, like, I didn't actually get a title change. I was just a developer You know, that was my title the whole time. They didn't have any fancy titles at the time, at least that I know about. But the thing that really drove it home that things had finally changed is that we had a technical architect, and I was working on a project. We're working on a project for a client. We're working on site with the client, kind of as a staff augmentation process, and we were bringing in some new developers, and and this technical architect was introducing everybody, and he got to me, and he said, "This is Dave. They tell me he's just a WordPress guy, but he does a lot more." And hearing somebody actually say, "This is how some people view you, but this is what you really are." Like, to me, that was validation. That was the point of validation. That was the point where somebody wasn't being forced to view me that way because of a pay scale, or because of a job title or something like that, but somebody who actually had seen me work, had actually interacted with my code, and had actually interacted with me. They looked at me and they looked at what other people called me and they said, "But you are more than that." And that to me is the point where in 2015, that was the point of validation. That is the point that I feel like I knew I was no longer a junior dev, and other developers knew I was no longer a junior dev. And so that's why, 16 years, 16 years a junior, lots of ups and downs, lots of craziness, lots of hope, and lots of hope being dashed along the way. But 2015 to 2024, 9 years later, it's been a good journey. It's been a good journey, and I've had a lot of opportunities to grow. I've had a lot of opportunities to learn, and now I have a lot of opportunities to help others, like helping you guys. And so, I hope that my very long-winded version of my story maybe resonated with you in a few spots. And I hope that my success, obviously, you can't necessarily assume that you'll have the same success as somebody else, but I hope that my success and my determination gives you hope that even whatever you're going through right now, whether it's the way other people view you, whether it's the difficulty in getting a real job, even just having a hard time learning something new, whatever it is that you're going through in your developer journey process that's maybe making you think about quitting, that's maybe making you feel like you're not good enough, or that's making you feel like this may not be the career for you. I hope more than anything that you would take my journey and use it as fuel for yourself, knowing that you most likely can do this. You just need somebody to give you that chance. You just need that first opportunity to prove yourself. And I think eventually those opportunities are going to come if you keep at it. So just a few things kind of that I would walk away from with this, kind of lessons learned maybe, from my perspective, is you need to keep in mind that every journey is unique. Your journey is going to look different from my journey. There's going to be some similar things. There's going to be some similar problems and frustrations, but just because your journey doesn't work out exactly the way mine does, doesn't mean yours was a failure. It doesn't mean that that you're doing something wrong. It's just different. Everybody comes at this from a different starting point. Everybody goes through different processes to get to where we want to be ultimately in the end. So remember that it's a journey, first of all, and that everybody's journey is unique. So try not to compare your journey with my journey, or your journey with somebody else's journey. Even here in the Dev Mentor Dave community, right? We want to encourage one another, and whatever your journey looks like, to keep going, to keep pushing, to keep moving forward. Secondly, don't forget that your journey is going to have setbacks. Mine was a pretty big one. I felt like for several months, going from doing the job full time to really doing something completely different, and not really having any prospects. Like I didn't have any interviews lined up. I didn't have any hope until I got that random call on a Saturday morning from a recruiter. So understand that there are going to be setbacks. You might lose a job early on, and you might not be able to get another job for months or even a year, depending on the market, depending on availability, depending on what you know and what you might need to learn. So there's going to be setbacks. Embrace that, and don't assume that the setback is the end. All right. That's the big thing that I would push. Don't assume just because you lose a job that you don't know how to do it, that you're not cut out for it. Don't let that push you down the road of depression. Don't let that push you down the road of feeling like you're not good enough. Let it be the fuel that makes you learn and grow, and let it be the fuel that makes you work harder, that makes you put out more resumes, that makes you put out more applications, that makes you try to apply for new things that you may not think that you qualify for. Let what feels like failure be fuel. It's a lot of F's. Let what feels like failure be fuel to facilitate future success. There we go. See, I know I can get more F's in there. But no, really, let that burn in you and force you and push you forward. Don't let it push you down, because almost everybody that I know of that has been a developer has had some form of setback in their career. I think it's just part of the growing pains. It's part of the process we tend to go through. One, because I think a lot of times junior developers tend to get jobs at companies, I'm trying to say this nicely, but companies that kind of use and abuse them. Junior developers are cheaper, and so they kind of burn them out a lot of times. And when you get fired from a job that doesn't necessarily treat you well, doesn't provide mentoring that you need, things like that, it can really make you feel like you've failed. And that's not necessarily the case. It could be that the company failed you. It could be the company didn't communicate expectations well. There's lots of reasons why you may have been let go from that first job, and it's not necessarily because you can't cut it. So don't let yourself go down that path. If you really want this career, let that be fuel that pushes you forward. So just understand that everybody's journey is going to be unique, and your journey is going to have setbacks. Okay. The third lesson learned is that your journey is going to be judged. And this is not fair, but it's a reality, and you need to get used to it, and you need to ignore it. That's the basic end of that. Like I said, I knew I could do the job, but other people didn't look at me because of the jobs that I was doing. Other people didn't see me as a real dev. And there are days that hurt. There are days that I really felt ostracized. I really felt like I wasn't getting the opportunities that I deserved. There are days that I felt like maybe they were right, and maybe I should quit. And that was really discouraging, and it hurt. And you could tell that people are judging you. And sometimes that's in interviews, by the questions they ask, trying to make you feel small in your knowledge. Sometimes that's in the people that you work with, not giving you opportunities, not providing opportunities for you to grow. People judge, and they judge based on their experience and their expectations. And we need to understand that that's going to happen. And just because other people don't view you as a better developer than you think that you are, that doesn't mean you're not a better developer. It just means they don't see it yet. And that's okay, because they don't have to see it. You just have to produce it. So don't let that discourage you. But you need to realize people are going to judge you. People are going to judge how you interact. People are going to judge how you code. People are going to use their own standards. There's no good standard out there. There's a reason why everybody has a different idea what a junior and mid and senior level developer is. There just isn't a good standard out there for that. There's no one way to decide. And so everybody uses their own standard, their own idea of how they want to judge you. And you just need to understand that. If you're working with somebody, you're interacting with somebody, and you feel like they're really judging you and thinking less of you than you really are, brush it off, because everybody's doing that, and they're all doing it with a different scale. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you can prove that you can do the job. So remember, your journey is going to be judged. But finally, I would say remember that it's worth it. The journey is worth it. And any developer that I have worked with who has been developing for more than professionally for more than 3 or 4 years, they'll all tell you, unless they just don't like it anymore, they'll all tell you that the pain and the frustration is worth it. Once you kind of establish who you are and what you can do, and once you begin to bump into real developer pay scale, it will be worth it. All the pain and the heartache and the frustration and the late nights and the debugging and the questioning, your sanity and your future, all of that will be worth it in the end. So don't give up. Don't give up. You can do it. I know you can do it. I've seen the way a lot of you talk about it in the Dev Mentor Dave Discord channel. Lots of stuff that I don't even know what you're talking about sometimes. So that's how I know you guys. I know you guys can do this. So don't give up. Understand it's going to be hard. There's going to be struggles. People are going to look down on you. It's not going to look the same as everybody else, but it's going to be worth it in the end if you stick to it. So hopefully my history, my testimony is an encouragement to that end. If you stuck around for it, or if you're willing to watch it later, if you've waited this long for an hour of me talking about myself. So sorry, but hopefully it was an encouragement to you. Thanks everybody for hanging out with me. Thanks for being willing to endure the long monologue of my history as a junior dev. But hopefully it was helpful to you. Hopefully it was encouraging to some degree for you in your journey. And if so, give it a like. If you're not subscribed by some chance and you've made it all the way here after 2 hours or an hour and 45 minutes, thank you, and subscribe.